this segment's dealing with the innovation take on what's called the culture web. So the culture web is about trying to analyze an existing culture and then potentially design a future culture. Why is it important from an innovation point of view? Because we think we can design a culture which is more appropriate to innovation. We think we can take a look at what's getting in the way, or put another way, we think we can analyze or help you to analyze how you are able or how you could get out of your own way as far as making progress in terms of the innovation culture. So in order to do this, let me just introduce you to the culture web if you haven't seen it before. If you have, that's fine, I'll be very brief. But in essence, at the heart of the culture web is what's called the paradigm. It's the way we think about the organization. And then there are 6 so-called lenses looking at the culture in the organization as it is. And our analysis would actually start with the lenses and then use these lenses to be able to analyze what the paradigm actually looks like. So let me just stick these in first. Forgive the fact that the drawing is not very good. But we first of all would have stories. So what stories get told in the organization? Who are the heroes and villains? What's gone on in the past that is now cast into myth and legend through the medium of stories? What symbols are there? So this could be brands, it could be physical buildings, it could be car parks, it could be names on doors, it could be certain types of carpets in certain sorts of offices, and so on and so forth. What are the symbols of the organization? By the way, what do customers see? What are the power structures? This is where do the decisions actually happen. So regardless of the delegation of authority in the organization, where does the power reside? What does the organizational structure look like? So this is who reports to who, what's dotted line, what's solid line, what does the organogram look like, and so on. What are the rituals and routines? And rituals and routines are things like budgeting, the planning cycle, investment cycle, the annual general meeting where the CEO and the board are facing the city analysts and the shareholders from the various different pension funds, etc., depending on who the shareholders are. But also things like recruitment, induction, etc., all of those things which are to do with people management, annual appraisals, bonuses, etc., and so forth. So things which we do regularly and are cast into ritual in that sense. And then what are the control systems in the organization? So what are the key performance indicators? And then again here, things like budgets, variance analysis, all the spreadsheets that we use, all the quality control elements, productivity control elements, and so on. So these are the various different lenses, and the way in which we would use them is if we're looking at this from an innovation point of view, as it happens, there's an overlap with what you would do in change management. What would you do in change management? We would make a note about the various different stories, we'd make a note about the various different symbols, and so on, all the way around. We would ask groups of people to give us inputs on all of that, and once we have that information, then we can take a view and say, therefore, we think we have X or Y particular culture. So once we've looked at the organization through these lenses, we are able to start to fathom the paradigm. So what would you see in the paradigm? You'd see we are very brand conscious, we are very customer centric, we are very resistant to change, we are incredibly competitive, or we're not, etc. So you'd start seeing a couple of bullet points in the middle which are reflecting the mindset of the organization. This, by the way, is not a process that should be taken too literally. It's not a scientific. It's not intended to be scientific. It's intended to be a vehicle through which you can have your staff or your colleagues or your peers work with you in a workshop format to start a conversation around these various different things in order to be able to try and ascertain where you are as is. And we use that terminology. So we talk about an as-is culture. Okay? I'll put that in inverted commas so you can see. Now, the process of, from an innovation point of view, of then looking at how do we change a culture, then starts, so whereas this is outside in, when we move across, what we are likely to do is we start with our aspiration, or the so-called to-be culture. And what we would do in a workshop setting is we would ask our colleagues to say, what do you think is the organization that customers would choose first? If our competitors were all lining up with us, what is it about our culture that would make our customers go, these are the people we want to deal with? What is it that makes our staff jump out of bed in the morning and go, I can't wait to get to work? So what is that culture? What does that look like? What is the culture that suppliers and subcontractors, if they have a choice about who they would serve, that's the culture that they'd like to be associated with? What is it about that culture? And what we would do is we would put those couple of bullet points into the middle here. And you may find that people are talking about we're a very high value brand, we're very design conscious, we're very customer centric, we are very contemporary, we are very future facing, etc. and so forth, dynamic, exciting, fun to be around. All of those are the kind of things that people would aspire to have. And then what we can do is we can work from the inside outwards, and we can start to then populate the external lenses. Again, stories, symbols, rituals and routines, organizational structures, power structures and control systems. We can then work from the inside to the outside, and in this instance, obviously, now what we're saying is, if this is our aspiring culture, what stories would we expect to hear? What symbols would we expect to see? What rituals and routines? What organizational structure, power structures, and control systems would we expect to see around the outside? And from the point of view of a change exercise, this can be done in a very simple way, in that there will be things about our existing culture which we would like to retain. And as is the case with Blue Ocean strategy, where there's a mechanism to shift from one way of doing things to a differentiated way of doing things, we might use an acronym, but in this particular case, let's just say, what are the things in each lens that we'd like to stop? Okay? Which are the things that we don't currently do that we'd like to introduce? And which are those things that we currently do that we'd like to continue to do? So there's a kind of stop, start, nurture idea. And my suggestion to you, by the way, is that when you are looking at these things and these, pick one of each of these to keep it simple. By the time you've added up 6 times 3, there's quite a lot to be added into the change environment. Now, so what we're looking at is a situation where I'm going from as is to be, thinking first about power structures through that stop, start, nurture. And I can say the same thing about organizational structures. I can say the same thing about rituals and routines, and so on, all the way around. The transition is from one to the other. A couple of caveats. You could do this at too high a level in the organization, and therefore it becomes meaningless. You could do it at a very low level in the organization, and perhaps it's less valuable. So you need to choose the level at which you do it and the group of people that you do it with. And you need to recognize that the process here is as important as the outcome. It's not like you're creating a blueprint for change necessarily. What you're looking for is getting people into that mode of conversation. It's a bit like doing an innovation audit. Are we really interested in the results, or are we interested in actually getting the conversation flowing and getting people using a similar language and moving in a similar direction in a motivated, aligned, positive way? So this is very much on offer. Now, as I say, it's done in a number of different contexts. So strategy, it's done in the context of change, but we think about it very much in terms of innovation, because if you think about the kind of culture that might be required in order to deliver white space prospects, that venture capital type culture is very different from the sort of portfolio culture you'd require in the core space of the business, where it's all about alignment and optimization and leverage and utilization and error reduction. Here we want to be in a culture where we're talking about experimentation and new horizons and alternative ways of doing things. And it requires a slightly different culture. So we can actually create that culture in pockets in the organization as long as we are ready to invest into that space. Okay.